Have you ever been, like, wide awake at 2 a.m. and just completely tormented by overthinking an interaction you had with a coworker earlier that day? Or maybe, a family member?
Oh, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I mean, you know exactly the kind of night I'm talking about. You're just staring at the ceiling. Your brain is running the same conversation on this infinite, exhausting loop.
Yeah, you're rewriting all your responses, right? Like
Yeah,
agonizing over the tone you use.
exactly.
Right,
And
right.
you're just totally consumed by this massive mental storm. Well, today's deep dive is actually rooted in that exact
It
feeling.
really is a universal experience. It
Yeah.
feels so isolating when you're in it, but
But you're definitely not alone.
Mhm.
Actually, that exact agonizing 2.0 M mental storm is the literal origin story for the source material we're looking at today.
Right, the essay.
Yeah, we're diving into an essay titled Sthitapragya, The Art of Emotional Untouchability. And it's by Dr. Jaswant Rathod, who is an assistant professor at Government Arts College in Gandhinagar.
Which is in India, right?
Right, and he explicitly notes in the text that this entire essay was born out of his own 2.0 M wakefulness. Like, he was lying there, caught in a storm of thoughts about how we practically torture ourselves by overthinking our relationships with the world.
It's so relatable. And, the main mission for us today is to really explore this incredible paradox he
Which
presents.
is.
Well, it's this question of how can we engage deeply with our personal and professional lives? Because we have to, right? We're social animals.
Yeah, we can't just like move to a cave and opt out of society.
Exactly. So how do we engage without allowing ourselves to be emotionally destroyed by it?
Yeah.
And Dr. Rathwood introduces this really compelling concept of becoming what he calls emotionally untouchable.
Okay, let's unpack this because he maps out the anatomy of human suffering with just incredible precision.
He really does. He outlines this almost inevitable sequence of how our human attachments basically turn into traps.
Right. So where does the sequence actually start?
Well, it begins with a pretty basic foundational reality. Because we're social creatures, we have to have social relations, we deal with family, friends, society at large.
Yeah, that's just life.
Right. And consequently, we naturally become deeply involved in these affairs. But the critical pivot, the danger zone, really happens when that deep involvement produces what Dr. Rathod calls possessive or obsessive desires.
I see. So because we are so invested in these people, we start expecting very specific behaviors from them.
Exactly.
Like, you think, I did this huge favor for you, so you obviously must reciprocate in this very specific way. Or, I'm your friend, so when I tell you my good news, you should react with the exact level of enthusiasm that I'm picturing.
And when they don't, it hurts. Because those expectations kind of mutate, right? They harden into these possessive feelings and obsessive emotions.
Yeah, the text mentions we develop this profound faith that our desires will be perfectly reflected in someone else's actions.
Right. And when they inevitably fail to act as we expect, because, they're independent human beings with their own minds, we experience deep, agonizing pain.
It's like, okay, imagine you're a movie director,
Okay, I like this.
but you're a director where the actors, meaning your friends, your family, your coworkers, they never actually received the script.
Oh, wow.
Right, the script only exists inside your own head. So you're sitting in the director's chair getting furiously angry and hurt because your actors keep missing their cues. They're walking to the wrong marks. They're saying the wrong lines.
But how could they not? They literally don't have the script.
Exactly. But you're still mad at them.
What's fascinating here is that analogy gets to the absolute core of the psychological trap. It's not the relationship itself that's causing the suffering.
Right.
It's our rigid faith, as the author calls it. It's the belief that our possessive desires should somehow dictate someone else's actions.
So the pain is completely manufactured by us.
Yeah, it lives entirely in that gap between the invisible scripts we wrote for them and the reality of their autonomous behavior. We're basically punishing ourselves for a lack of control we never even had to begin with.
Wow, that is so true. And the thing is, this dynamic doesn't politely stop when we walk out our front door.
Oh, definitely not.
It bleeds directly into the workplace. I mean, we're spending over 6 hours a day involved in professional affairs, surrounded by the same unpredictable people.
And the workplace operates as this giant pressure cooker
Yeah.
for this specific type of suffering. Over time, that daily proximity leads to emotional attachment with your colleagues, your juniors, your seniors, and especially the boss.
Oh, yeah.
And just like in our personal lives, this professional attachment mutates into a possessive relationship. It gets fueled by obsessiveness on both sides.
Dr. Rathod actually describes us developing, quote, dreamy desires and Herculean expectations for the people we work with.
Herculean expectations is such a great phrase.
It really is. Like, we expect our coworkers to magically anticipate our needs, or we expect our boss to flawlessly validate our efforts every single day. And when they fail to meet those dreamy desires, cracks immediately start forming in the working relationship.
Because nourishing possessive feelings based on obsessive expectations in a professional setting is just inherently dangerous.
There's actually a really striking Indian proverb he highlights in the text to illustrate this workplace dynamic. He says, "One should keep distance from the donkey and his boss. Both have power to kick you out."
It's funny, but it's painfully accurate.
It is, but wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, sure.
If I am ambitious and I want to succeed, isn't it completely natural to care deeply about my work? Like, if I completely distance myself from the outcome of a major project, aren't I just going to get fired for apathy? How do we separate ambition from obsession?
That is the big question. And the author anticipates that exact dilemma. He gives a very specific warning here.
What does he say?
He says, be professional, but do not get possessive or obsessive about ambitious works, because that leads directly to tragedy.
So it's about the distinction between the work and the outcome.
Yes, exactly. You can apply all your skills, all your ambition, and your drive to the task itself. Being professional means doing the work exceptionally well.
Right.
But becoming possessive-like, believing you own the outcome, or demanding that your colleagues react to your ambition in a specific way, that is what leads to the tragedy he's talking about.
Okay, I get that. But if we are practically required to interact with these unpredictable bosses and we're obligated to deal with our relatives, what is the actual survival strategy here?
The remedy Dr. Rathod outlines is maintaining a state of being aloof from possessiveness in all our relations, professional, personal, social, all of it.
Okay, we need to clarify this for the listener because emotional distance can sound really harsh.
Right, it's easily misunderstood.
Yeah, because this deliberate emotional distance does not mean being antisocial. It doesn't mean you're unprofessional, and it doesn't make you insensitive.
No, not at all. You're not becoming a cold, unfeeling robot.
Yeah.
It's really about creating a protective psychological boundary.
A boundary that gives you some actual benefits.
Huge benefits. First, it provides the mental space to actually enjoy your own social, professional, and personal identity. Think about it. When you aren't wasting all your mental bandwidth policing whether everyone around you is following your invisible script.
You suddenly have all this extra energy.
Yes, you have a surplus of energy. And that surplus is what secures your mental peace. The essay points out that keeping this distance stops you from getting hastily involved in trivial affairs.
Which is the ultimate cure for that 2 a.m. wake-up.
Exactly.
You stop burning your cognitive energy agonizing over some offhand comment a coworker made at 3 p.m.
Right, because you've stepped back. And maintaining that distance also gives you the clarity to identify your own weaknesses. When you're not blinded by obsessive expectations of others, you can objectively see where you're falling short.
So what does this all mean? Basically, this safe space acts like an emotional buffer zone in your daily life.
That's a great way to look at it. A buffer zone.
But, simply deciding to be emotionally distant sounds really great in theory.
Yeah.
But in practice, when your boss sends a really passive-aggressive email at 4:55 p.m. or a family member makes a stinging comment at dinner, keeping that distance feels practically impossible.
It does. It feels really hard. And the text notes that this process of becoming emotionally untouchable, it's not sudden. It's not accidental.
Right.
It's a simultaneous, ongoing process. And ironically, it requires peace and tranquility to occur. But that peace is usually born from intense internal turmoil.
Yeah, the text brings in Gautama the Buddha as the ultimate historical example of this.
I love this part of the essay.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because he didn't just suddenly or accidentally leave his luxurious home and all his comforts. He experienced this massive internal storm of thoughts regarding his relationship to the world first.
Right. It was that internal interrogation, that intense investigation of his attachments that led to his spiritual empowerment.
Which the Indian scriptures call moksha or mahabhinikraman, right?
Exactly. It's a profound departure from worldly attachment.
It makes me think of, compare the mind to a stormy ocean. You can't force the waves to stop, right? You can't just yell at the ocean to calm down.
No, you just drown.
Right. But that violent storm, like those 2-4 a.m. thoughts, is actually the catalyst that forces you to build a stronger ship.
Oh, I like that. Building a stronger ship.
Yeah, the internal interrogation is you building that ship so you can eventually find tranquil waters. You want stopping the storm outside, you're just navigating it better.
Yes. Let's look at how that actually works, step by step. Go back to that passive-aggressive email from your boss.
Ugh, my heart rate is spiking just thinking about it.
Right. Your immediate instinct is to draft this fiery, defensive response.
Mm.
The storm is raging. But internal interrogation is the moment you force yourself to pause and ask, why does this bother me so much? What invisible script did I write for my boss that they just violated?
Am I upset because of the work, or am I upset because I possessively expected them to validate me?
Exactly. And through that intense internal investigation, you separate the work from your ego.
Yeah.
You realize you can't control their email tone. You can only control your own professional output.
So in a modern context, Mahabhanikaraman isn't necessarily abandoning a palace to go wander in the forest.
No, probably not.
It's the mental departure from the illusion of control. It's like closing your laptop at 5 p.m. and actually leaving the stress at the desk, instead of carrying the emotional weight of your boss's mood into your evening.
And that departure leads directly to moksha, which isn't just some abstract afterlife concept here. It's the liberation of a quiet mind at 2 a.m.
Right.
You achieve it by interrogating your attachments until they just lose their power over you.
So building on that idea of spiritual empowerment, the conversation in the essay really shifts to the ultimate futility of trying to control the world around us.
It does. Dr. Rathridge really contrasts two very different philosophical endpoints here. First, he points to the tragic Western attempt to control other people's emotional status.
And he uses Shakespeare's King Lear for this, right?
Yes, King Lear is the prime example of this tragedy.
Lear attempts to dictate and control the emotions of his daughters. He demands this very specific performative love from them. He's basically the ultimate overbearing boss or parent demanding that everyone follow his exact script.
Right, and when reality fails to match his rigid script, when Cordelia refuses to perform the love he demands, it completely shatters him.
Because if you try to control people emotionally, tragedy is the only possible outcome.
Exactly. Lear's possessiveness destroys his family, his kingdom, and literally his own mind.
The author also brings in Shakespeare's 7 stages of life to show how this desperate clinging to the world ultimately leaves a person's final phase of life, quote, sans taste.
Meaning without flavor, without joy.
Right. Because if you spend your entire lifetime fighting a losing battle to control the uncontrollable actions of other people, you just end up exhausted and bitter.
You really do. Now, on the flip side of that tragic endpoint, we have the concept taught in Indian scriptures, which is the core of our deep dive today.
Becoming Sthitapragya.
Yes. A person who remains untouched by the affairs of the world.
The essay offers a definition of a Sthitapragya that can actually be a bit tricky to translate into modern English. It says a Sthitapragya is someone who is completely careless about the outcomes of their actions.
Right, and in modern conversation, careless usually implies being sloppy or negligent. Like if you're careless at your job, you get fired.
Yeah, exactly. But the text is pointing to something much deeper than negligence.
Much deeper. A more accurate way to understand this carelessness is being completely unburdened or detached from the ultimate fruit of your labor.
Okay, so a Sthitapragya puts in maximum effort. They do the work meticulously.
Oh, absolutely. But once the action is complete, they surrender the result. They are carefree regarding the outcome because they understand a fundamental truth.
That consequences are entirely uncontrollable, unpredictable, and driven by natural destiny, not man-made forces.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the essay reveals that our entire lives are basically this dual, simultaneous learning process.
What do you mean by dual?
Well, from the moment we are born, society trains us to engage emotionally. We're taught to care deeply about the promotion, social status, the affairs of the world.
Right, we're constantly told to care.
But at the exact same time, to survive that very engagement, we must simultaneously teach ourselves this art of emotional untouchability. We have to learn to care deeply about the action while remaining completely detached from the uncontrollable outcome.
Wow. It really is the ultimate balancing act. I mean, we naturally trap ourselves by setting up these Herculean expectations of how other people should behave.
We do it every day.
But Dr. Rathod's 2 a.m. revelation shows us the mechanics of escaping that trap. By creating that safe emotional distance, by building a stronger ship and treating outcomes as uncontrollable, we protect our mental peace.
And we do it without sacrificing our professional or social identities. We maintain our ambition and our social grace, but we just sever that possessive cord that ties our inner peace to the unpredictable actions of others.
So, for you listening right now, the next time you find yourself tossing and turning at 2 a.m., totally frustrated by a boss who isn't recognizing your hard work or, an uncooperative relative who simply won't act the way you want them to.
Remember the movie director.
Yes, remember the movie director. You are sitting in the chair getting furious at actors who do not have your script. You cannot control them.
No, you.
The only thing you have absolute control over is your own emotional distance. You have the power to stop the internal storm and interrogate your own expectations.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering question to really consider as you navigate your own professional and personal worlds.
What's that?
If we truly become Sthitapragya, if we become careless and completely unburdened by the outcomes of our actions because they are inherently uncontrollable, does that mean the only real sustainable joy we can ever experience in life has to be found entirely in the doing itself, rather than in the goals we originally set out to achieve?